My father sold me for money and then I bear a hell life. Before starting the story, I want to ask something. Everyone tells me that your voice hasn't aged yet. That is miracle. Do you also feel the same? Please let us know in comments section. My name is Linda Graves, and before the world knew me as the gray-haired lady who bakes blueberry pies and remembers everyone's birthday, I was a girl who survived something most people wouldn't imagine, even in their worst nightmares. When you see my hands trembling sometimes, when you hear my breath catch before I speak, it isn't age, it's memory. Memories like old wounds that never fully heal. People see me now and think I lived an ordinary American life: school, marriage, kids, porch swings. But that's the lie time tells. My truth began on a humid August afternoon in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when I was sold by the man who was supposed to protect me. Not abandoned. Not given away. Sold. My father, Harold Graves, handed me over like I was a piece of livestock, traded to clear a gambling debt. I was 12 years old, barefoot, sunburned, holding a doll I'd made from old cloth scraps. I remember the feeling of the gravel under my feet, hot and sharp, the air sticky with summer heat, and the taste of fear rising in the back of my throat. He led me down the long driveway toward a dusty road where a gray pickup truck waited. Two men leaned against it. Thick arms, leathery skin, eyes that didn't blink. Men who didn't smile. Men who had the smell of cigarettes and cheap beer soaked into their clothes. I looked up at my father, trying to understand why we weren't going fishing like he promised. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Instead, he nodded at the men and said the sentence that cracked my childhood into pieces. She'll cover the rest of it. Take her. First, I didn't understand. I thought he meant they were driving me somewhere safe. Maybe to my aunt's house. Maybe to the police station for protection. Maybe anywhere but where my stomach told me we were going. But when one man grabbed my arm, squeezing hard, pulling me away, the truth slammed into me like a baseball bat. I screamed. I clawed at the air. Cried, "Daddy! Daddy, please!" He didn't flinch. He didn't move. He didn't say goodbye. He just stood there on the side of that road, arms crossed, jaw tight, pretending like I was nothing more than a payment. And when they shoved me into the back of the truck, I pressed my hands against the window, leaving sweaty fingerprints as I screamed his name over and over until my voice broke. He never looked back. Not even once. The truck jolted forward, spitting dust into the air, and I realized I was being taken to a place I wouldn't come back from. That realization didn't hit all at once. No, trauma is slow like that. It starts as confusion, becomes fear, then becomes a void so heavy it suffocates you. We drove for hours, maybe more than that. Time didn't behave right. The sun dropped, the sky turned purple, then black. We passed empty gas stations, closed diners, broken down sheds. I tried to memorize the roads, the turns, anything, but everything began to blur. My tears smeared the window, making the world look like a painting melting in the heat. Finally, the truck turned down a dirt road surrounded by thick trees. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing a tall chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Behind it was a cluster of run-down buildings made from rusted shipping containers. The whole place felt like a graveyard that refused to die. Dogs barked sharply. Flashlights swung across the yard. Men with rifles walked the perimeter. It didn't look like a home. It didn't look like a camp. It looked like a prison built by men who had stopped being human long ago. One of them dragged me out of the truck, almost lifting me off the ground, and hauled me inside a metal structure. Everything smelled like sweat, gasoline, and blood. The floors were cold concrete. The walls were covered in old graffiti and claw marks, finger-shaped scars that told me other hands had once tried to escape. They shoved me into a tiny room with a thin mattress. A single bulb hung from a wire in the ceiling, flickering like it was struggling to stay alive just as much as I was. The door slammed shut behind me with a metallic thud that made my bones shake. I sat there numb, staring at the wall. For the first time in my life, I felt the world collapse in on itself. I didn't cry. Not at first. Shock swallowed the tears. Fear froze them before they could fall. But when the lights went out and the room sank into darkness, the truth hit me like a tidal wave. He sold me. My father sold me. For money. And that was the night the child inside me died. The next morning, the world didn't get better. It got heavier. The guards spoke in harsh tones, barking commands. I learned quickly that silence kept me alive longer. Stillness kept me unnoticed. I copied the other girls, kept my head down, my mouth shut, my breath small. There were many of us. Some teenagers. Some my age. Some younger. Some didn't speak English. Some couldn't speak at all. Their eyes told stories too heavy for words. But in that darkness I found two lights. Lila and Grace. Lila was 15, with a soft voice and long brown hair that she tied into braids with strips of old fabric. Grace was around my age, 13, with eyes sharp as knives and a spark in her soul that refused to go out. We weren't allowed to talk, but trauma builds its own language. We shared looks. We shared crumbs of bread. We shared stolen moments of whispered dreams. Dreams about rescue, dreams about escape, dreams about home. Even though home wasn't safe for me. One night when the guards passed by, Lila whispered through the darkness. Linda, don't let them take your mind. They already took your body. Don't let them take who you are. Grace added softly, we have to stay alive. For each other. Those two girls kept me breathing when I didn't want to anymore. But the compound was a monster. Every day I saw things no child should ever see. Heard screams that welded themselves into my memory. I learned to read footsteps. Heavy boots meant danger. Soft steps meant a girl being moved. Hurried stomps meant punishment. Hope wasn't just rare, it was forbidden. But hope did come to me. From the outside world. From a voice I hadn't heard in 6 months. My brother Sam. I didn't know he was looking for me. I didn't know he had plastered my face on telephone poles across Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. I didn't know he had begged police stations to take him seriously. I didn't know he had spent his savings searching for his missing little sister. But one night while sweeping the kitchen area, I overheard two guards talking. One of them spat into the sink and grumbled, "That damn brother's still asking around for her. Been asking folks in Arkansas now." My broom froze mid-sweep. "Brother. Arkansas. Asking. What did you tell him?" the other guard asked. "Nothing," the first one smirked. "Told him she's probably long gone by now." They laughed. But I didn't. Because in that moment I realized something that set my soul on fire. Sam never gave up on me. He was still looking. Still searching. Still hoping. And that single piece of information, the knowledge that someone in the world still loved me, became fuel. The kind of fuel that builds escape plans. The kind of fuel that reignites life. The kind of fuel that makes a girl choose freedom over fear. That night, in the darkness of my cell, I whispered to myself, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to find Sam. And I'm going to make my father answer for what he did. That was the moment the survivor in me awoke. I began counting guard rotations, watching gate patterns, testing weak boards, memorizing the yard. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in something dangerous. Hope. And hope, I discovered, is the most powerful weapon a girl can have in hell. Hope is a fragile thing in a place built on fear. One wrong glance, one wrong whisper, and the guards would crush it like a cigarette under their boots. So when I learned Sam was still searching for me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I didn't dare breathe it too loudly. But inside something shifted. For the first time in 6 months, I slept with my eyes closed. Not because I felt safe, but because I finally had a reason to make it out alive. The routine of hell. Every day in that compound was predictable, and predictable meant survivable. Sunrise. The guards banged on the steel doors with batons. Breakfast was a ladle of lukewarm oatmeal thrown into plastic bowls. Sometimes the bowls weren't washed. Sometimes the oatmeal had mold. No one complained. Morning. Cleaning duty or kitchen duty. I always volunteered for kitchen duty. It meant I could steal things, breadcrumbs, chicken bones, anything I could hide. Afternoon. That was the worst time. The compound became loud, violent, unpredictable. The guards drank more. The men who ran the place made their rounds. Girls cried. Girls prayed. Night. Night was when the compound held its breath. Night was when the monsters fed. Night was when hope had to survive in whispers. The plan that could kill us. After I learned Sam was searching for me, I started paying attention to the details I used to avoid. I listened to every conversation. I memorized every footstep. I studied the guards like they were puzzles. Lila and Grace noticed. One night, after the lights went out, Grace whispered through the darkness, Linda, why are you watching everything? I turned to her, my voice barely a breath. Because I'm getting out of here. Grace didn't laugh. Grace never laughed. She leaned closer. How? I'm not sure yet, I answered. But I know one thing. If my brother is still looking for me, I can't stop looking for a way back to him. Lila sat up, her silhouette soft in the dim moonlight seeping through the barred window. If you leave, she whispered, take us with you. The weight of that sentence fell on me like a chain. Escape was already impossible for one girl. Trying to save three? That was a death sentence. But when I looked at them, two girls who had saved my sanity, two girls who held my shaking hands in the dark, two girls who whispered hope when hope was forbidden, I knew I couldn't leave them behind. We escape, I whispered. Or we die trying. Grace nodded. Lila wiped silent tears. And that night became the beginning of our rebellion. The first break in the walls. The compound had a weakness. It wasn't the guards. It wasn't the fences. It wasn't the buildings. It was the men's arrogance. They believed we were too scared to try anything. They believed fear made us obedient. They believed our spirits had been crushed. But they were wrong. One afternoon while cleaning the kitchen, I noticed a panel at the bottom of the wall had rusted so badly that the metal crumbled when I pressed my foot against it. Behind it was a narrow crawl space that led into darkness. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. This was it. A crack in hell's armor. That night I showed Grace and Lila. This leads somewhere, I whispered. Or nowhere, Grace replied. Or the grave, Lila added. Anywhere is better than here, I said. We agreed to test it the next night. The night everything went wrong. The moon was hidden behind clouds. Thunder rolled in the distance. The wind rattled the metal walls like nature itself wanted us to run. It was the perfect night. The guards were drinking more than usual. Rain made them restless. Their voices grew louder. Their footsteps heavier. Their attention weaker. After lights out, we waited exactly 19 minutes. That was the time between the last guard check and the next one. I pried open the rusted panel. The metal groaned softly, flakes falling like brown snow. Behind it was a small tunnel so tight only a child could fit. I went first. The metal scraped my shoulders. Dust filled my nose. Something crawled across my hand. I told myself it was just a spider, not something worse. Lila followed. She was crying silently, her breath shaky. Grace came last, whispering, "Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't freeze." The tunnel stretched farther than I expected. It felt endless. My knees burned. My palms bled. My breath grew sharp. Finally, I saw faint light. A grate. Loose screws. A way out. I pushed the grate with all my strength. Nothing. I pushed again. Still nothing. Panic began to rise like smoke in my lungs. "Move," Grace whispered behind me. "I'm trying." Kicked it. Once. Twice. On the third kick, it snapped open and fell into the mud outside. We crawled out into the rain, soaking wet, covered in dirt, lungs burning for air. The compound fence was only 30 feet away. 30 feet between us and freedom. 30 feet between life and death. "We run on 3, I said, swallowing my fear. 1. Lila grabbed my hand. 2. Grace squeezed my arm. 3. We sprinted across the yard, feet splashing through mud. Rain blurring our vision. I could taste freedom, wet, cold, electric. Then, a gunshot ripped through the air. Lila screamed. She fell. I turned so fast I slipped in the mud. Lila lay on the ground, clutching her leg. Blood poured between her fingers, mixing with the rainwater. "No, no, no, Lila!" I cried. Grace grabbed her other arm. "Get up. Please get up." But Lila couldn't move. Her face went white. Her lips trembled. Footsteps thundered behind us. Flashlights cut through the rain. Dogs barked violently. We were out of time. "Go," Lila whispered. "Go without me." I shook my head so hard my vision blurred. "No, I'm not leaving you." She grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "If you stay, we all die. You have a brother waiting for you. Go. Please go." Grace was crying. I was crying. The rain was crying. But the guns were getting closer. I kissed her forehead, my tears mixing with the rain on her skin. "I swear," I whispered, "I'll come back for you." Then Grace yanked me and we ran. The last thing I heard was Lila's scream as the guards reached her. A scream that still lives in my nightmares. The forest of mercy and madness. Grace and I reached the fence. The storm had blown part of the wiring loose. The metal sagged, creating a small hole near the ground, just big enough for 2 broken girls to crawl through. We slipped under it, ripping our clothes, scraping our stomachs, leaving blood on the wire. Behind us, guards shouted. Dogs barked. Flashlights swung wildly. Ahead of us, forest. Dark, wet, endless forest. We ran until our legs gave out. We fell. We crawled. We staggered. Trees scratched our faces. Roots tripped us. Thunder followed us like a warning. Hours passed. Eventually, the adrenaline drained from our bodies, leaving nothing but shaking limbs and raw fear. We collapsed at the base of a fallen tree, gasping for breath. Grace leaned her head on my shoulder. We left her. I know. She saved us. I know. Will we die out here? I shook my head. Not because I believed it, but because I had to. No. I'm going to find Sam. He's looking for me. If we can get to a road, someone will help us. Grace laughed bitterly. People don't help girls like us. Sam will, I whispered. Sam always helps. The storm faded. The night quieted. The forest exhaled. And for the first time in half a year, we were outside the walls. Not safe. Not healed. Not free. But outside. And that was enough for one night. The forest was quiet in a way that scared me. After months of shouting guards, rattling chains, and muffled cries, silence felt unnatural, almost dangerous. Grace and I huddled under the fallen tree trunk, soaked to the bone, our bodies trembling from cold and terror. When dawn finally began to break, the sun didn't feel warm at all. Instead, it felt like a spotlight exposing us, making us visible to every monster still hunting us. Grace whispered, "Do you think they're searching the forest?" I nodded. "They won't stop until they find us." She looked at me with hollow eyes. "And Lila, do you think?" I cut her off before my voice broke. "We can't think about that right now. If she's alive, she needs us to get help. If she's not, then we owe her our freedom." Grace wiped her tears with a muddy sleeve. "Then we keep moving." We stood up on shaking legs and began walking. Branches snapped under our feet. Thorns snagged our skin. Every rustle of leaves made our hearts pound. Hunger clawed at our stomachs. We hadn't eaten since the previous morning at the compound. The forest looked endless, but we kept going because stopping meant dying. After an hour, Grace sank down beside a rock. "I can't," she whispered. "My legs are giving out." I crouched beside her. "We can rest for a minute." But only a minute. That's what survival demanded. I closed my eyes, listening to the forest, trying to make sense of any sound. Birds. Wind. Leaves. No footsteps. No dogs. Not yet. Grace's voice trembled. "Linda, do you really think Sam is still looking for you?" "Yes," I whispered, because believing anything else would break me. "My brother is stubborn. If he thinks I'm alive, he won't stop." Grace looked down at her cut, swollen hands. "I don't have anyone like that." "You have me," I said. "And if we live through this, you'll have Sam too." She smiled weakly. "Then I'll keep walking." We pushed onward. After another hour of stumbling through the trees, we found a narrow stream cutting through the forest. The water was icy but clean, the kind of cold that stung your teeth. We drank like animals, hands shaking, water dripping down our chins. Grace splashed her face. "God, I forgot what clean water tasted like." I cupped my hands and drank again, the cold numbing my throat. "We follow this. Water always leads somewhere." Grace nodded. "Hopefully to people. Not wolves." "Either way," I said, "we keep going." We walked along the edge of the stream, using it to guide us. Hours passed. Our feet ached. Our clothes stuck to our skin. But the stream kept leading us onward. Eventually we heard something new. A faint hum. Cars. Civilization. The sound grew louder with each step until finally, through the trees, we saw a stretch of asphalt. A road. A real paved road. Grace grabbed my arm. "Linda, look. It's a highway." I choked back tears. We made it. We actually made it. But the moment felt fragile, like a bubble that could pop with one bad decision. "We can't run onto the road," I said. "If the wrong car stops, we're dead." Grace nodded. "So what do we do?" "We hide in the trees," I said, pointing to a cluster of bushes, "and wait. Someone trustworthy will come. A woman. A family. Someone normal." Grace bit her lip. "And if no one does? Then we walk." We crouched in the bushes for what felt like eternity, watching cars fly past. Minutes became hours. Our stomachs growled. Our legs cramped. The sun moved across the sky like it had somewhere better to be. Finally, a silver SUV slowed down. It didn't stop at first. It rolled forward a little, then hesitated. And then the driver reversed. My heart shot into my throat. Grace grabbed my wrist. Linda, is this good? Or bad? I don't know, I whispered. The SUV pulled onto the gravel shoulder. A woman climbed out, blonde hair, mid-40s, wearing a uniform from a grocery store. Her face looked kind, tired, human. She called out gently, "Hello? Are you girls all right?" Grace burst into tears. I felt my knees weaken. I stepped out slowly, hands raised in caution. "Please, we need help." The woman's eyes widened as she took in our scratched faces, dirty clothes, and swollen feet. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What happened to you?" "We escaped," I said. "From people who hurt us." The woman swallowed hard. "Get in the car. Now. You're safe with me." Grace tugged my sleeve. "Linda, do we trust her?" I looked into the woman's eyes. Soft. Terrified. Genuine. "Yes," I said. We climbed into the SUV. And for the first time in 6 months, I sat on a real seat, inhaled real car air, and heard a real woman say, "You're safe now. I promise." I broke down crying. The woman, her name was Alice, drove us straight to the nearest hospital. Nurses rushed out with blankets and wheelchairs. Grace and I were separated, taken into different exam rooms. My doctor spoke gently but clinically, as if trying to hide how horrified she was. "Linda, you're dehydrated, severely underweight, and you have multiple untreated injuries. How long were you held?" 6 months, I whispered. She froze. 6 months. I nodded. The doctor opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes softened. "You're safe now," she said. "We're going to help you." For the next hour, I went through questions, blood tests, physical exams. Every time the doctor asked something like, "Did they do this to you? Or did they force you to?" My throat closed up. The answer was always yes. And every yes made her jaw tighten with anger. Finally, she said, "Your brother has been searching for you. The missing persons report says his name is Sam Graves." I felt my heart explode. "He's here." I choked. "He's been here every week for 6 months," she said. "He left flyers everywhere. He begged the police to investigate. And when no one listened, he hired private search teams." My throat closed. My chest tightened. Sam never gave up. The doctor smiled. "He's on his way. We called him the moment you checked in." I broke down crying so hard the nurse had to hold my shoulders. "I'm here," the nurse whispered. "It's over now." But it wasn't over. Not yet. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. Fast, frantic, the kind of footsteps that come from a heart running 2 miles ahead of a body. The door swung open, and there he was. Sam, my big brother. My protector. The only person who ever loved me without condition. His hair was longer. His eyes were red. He looked older, exhausted, broken. But when he saw me, he shattered. "Oh my God," he whispered, stumbling toward my bed. "Linda." I burst into tears before he even touched me. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into the safest embrace I had felt since childhood. "I thought I lost you," he cried. "I thought I'd never see you again." I pressed my face into his shoulder. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "No," he said, gripping me tighter. "You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. I should have protected you." "You did," I whispered. "You're the reason I survived." He cried harder. We stayed like that for minutes, holding on to each other like the world outside didn't exist. Finally, he pulled back and wiped my tears. "Linda," he said softly, "I'm taking you home. You're never going through anything like this again." But he didn't know the truth yet. He didn't know why all this happened. He didn't know who sold me. He didn't know who betrayed me. My father's shadow still loomed over us. And when Sam learned the truth, the world would burn. Sam didn't leave my side for the rest of the day. Nurses came and went. Doctors murmured updates. Social workers asked gentle questions. But Sam sat in the corner of my hospital room like a silent guard dog. Jaw clenched, knuckles white, eyes heavy with the kind of pain a man carries when he's been ripped apart and stitched back together with desperation alone. Every so often, he'd look at me as if to make sure I was still real. When night finally settled over the hospital, The room grew quiet. The TV played some soft documentary neither of us was listening to. The sound of heart monitors echoed distantly from the hallway. I sensed it before he said it. He was waiting for the truth. The truth I had been avoiding since the moment he walked in. The truth that would change him forever. Sam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face with both hands. "Linda," he whispered, "I need you to tell me what happened. Not everything, not yet, but something. Anything. I need to understand." My throat tightened. I stared at my blanket, wrinkling the corner between my fingers. My breath shook. My heart fluttered painfully. "Sam," I whispered, "you're not going to like the truth." He scooted his chair closer. "I won't like anything about what happened to you. But knowing is better than imagining." I shook my head. "No. Not this." He reached for my hand. "Try me." Silence rolled between us for a long moment. I felt the words rising, crawling up my throat like something poisonous, because saying them out loud meant they became real again. Finally, I whispered, "Dad sold me." Sam froze, his hand still holding mine, but his body turning to stone. His jaw dropped slightly. His eyes widened in utter disbelief. "Linda," his voice cracked. "What did you just say?" I swallowed hard as tears filled my eyes. He sold me. For money. He handed me to the men who took me." Sam's face went pale. "Dad," he whispered. "Our father? Our father did that to you." I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks now, silently, uncontrollably. Sam leaned back as if someone had punched him in the stomach. His breath shattered. His eyes filled instantly. Not just with sadness but with rage. A deep, bone-shaking rage I had never seen in him before. "No," he whispered. "No. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He's cruel, but he's not." "He is," I said. "Completely." I watched the moment Sam's heart broke in front of me. He put his hand over his mouth, eyes squeezing shut as if trying to physically keep himself from screaming. "He sold my baby sister," he whispered through trembling hands. "My God. I trusted him. I visited him. I asked him for help finding you. His voice cracked into absolute devastation. "He lied to me," Sam choked. "He looked me in the eyes, knowing what he did, and lied." I nodded. Sam stood suddenly, pacing the small room, running his hands through his hair like he was trying to pull the anger out of his skull. "That monster," he whispered. "That absolute monster." "Sam," I said gently. He turned sharply toward me, eyes blazing. "How long did he plan this? Why you? Why at all?" "For money," I said bitterly. "He said I wasn't worth anything else." Sam slammed his fist into the wall, lightly enough not to break anything, but hard enough to shake the bed. "I swear," he whispered, his voice thick and raw. "I'm going to make him pay for this." Sam sat back down, burying his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. "Linda," he said, voice cracking, "I failed you." "No," I whispered. "You saved me. You found me." He shook his head violently. "It took 6 months. 6 months of you being. He couldn't finish the sentence. I placed my trembling hand over his. "Sam," I whispered, "I only survived because I knew you were looking for me." Slowly, he lifted his head. His face streaked with tears, eyes red and burning. "You survived because you're stronger than all of us." I smiled weakly. "I survived because I wanted to see you again." He breathed shakily. "Tell me everything," he whispered. "Tell me exactly what he did." So I did. Not all the details, not the deepest horrors, but enough. Enough for Sam's chest to shake. Enough for him to grip the chair until his knuckles turned white. Enough for his heart to darken with a fury he had never known. When I finished, he stood again and walked to the window, staring out into the city lights like he wanted to tear the whole world apart. "I'm going to the police," he said quietly. I froze. "Sam." "No," he said firmly, turning toward me. "You're not stopping me. What Dad did, that's not just wrong, that's criminal. He's not just a bad father. He's a predator. A trafficker. A monster." I stared at him. "He's still your father." "He's nothing to me now," Sam said, voice cold, flat, final. "Sam." He shook his head. "There is no forgiveness for what he did. There is no excuse. There is no misunderstanding. He sold you, Linda. He sold you like an object. Tears burned down my cheeks again. He deserves everything coming for him. But when Sam looked at me again, his eyes softened. But I need you to tell me one thing, he whispered. Do you want justice? I wiped my tears. My voice shook. I want him to know that I survived what he tried to destroy. Sam nodded, stepping closer. And do you want him punished? I swallowed hard. Then I whispered the truth I had kept buried since the day I escaped. Yes. Sam exhaled sharply. Then I swear, he said, taking my hand, I will stand beside you until he can't hurt anyone ever again. The next morning, a detective came to interview me. Sam refused to leave the room. He sat beside me like a guard, shoulders tense, arms crossed, jaw clenched. The detective's eyes were steady but empathetic. Linda, she said gently, everything you say will be used to open a criminal investigation. Do you understand that? I nodded. Do you want to proceed? Sam squeezed my hand. I took a deep, shaky breath. Yes. The detective opened her notebook. Start from the beginning, she said. Tell me what your father did. So I did. I told her about the night he sold me, about the men who dragged me, about the compound, about the escape, about Lila, about Grace, about everything. The detective wrote for a long time. When I finished, she closed her notebook and said, Linda, we're issuing an immediate warrant for your father's arrest. Sam exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and rage. What about the men who took her? He asked. We're pursuing them as well, she said. Your sister's information will help us locate their operation. My chest tightened with hope. Fragile, flickering hope. What about the girls still in there? I whispered. Grace is still. We'll do everything possible, the detective said softly. Sam grabbed my shoulder. We're going to save them. But deep down I wondered, did Grace survive the night we escaped? Would she ever make it out? Or did the forest only save two of us? Sam stayed with me in the hospital for 2 more days. He brought me food, held my hand through nightmares, talked to me until I fell asleep. He was gentle when I needed comfort and fierce when I needed protection. But the anger inside him grew like a wildfire. On the 3rd day, he said the words I knew were coming. Linda, I need to confront him. My heart dropped. Sam, no. I'm not going to hurt him, he said, though the tone in his voice made me doubt he meant that. I just need to see him once. I need him to look at me and understand what he's done. I need him to see what he caused. I shook my head. He will try to manipulate you. That won't work anymore. He will lie. I don't care. Sam. He touched my cheek gently. I won't do anything without you, he whispered. But you need to tell me one thing honestly. Do you want him to see the daughter he tried to erase? My heart pounded violently. Did I? Did I want him to see my face? Did I want him to know I survived? Did I want him to feel fear, shame, guilt? Or did I want him to rot alone, never knowing whether I lived or died? I closed my eyes, and I realized the truth. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to confront the one thing he never expected, the daughter who came back from hell. I opened my eyes. Yes, I whispered. I want him to see me. Sam's jaw set. Then we'll do this together. And in that moment I knew. The real war was just beginning. The day we confronted him began like any ordinary morning, but I already knew it wouldn't be ordinary. The sun rose over Baton Rouge, a pale, weak thing through the gray clouds, as if nature itself understood that darkness still hung heavy in our lives. Sam had rented a small office in town, not far from where Dad had moved after all the trouble he'd caused years ago. We drove together in silence, the air thick between us, charged with anger, fear, and anticipation. I gripped the edges of my seat like it was the only anchor holding me together. When we arrived, I saw him standing in the doorway. My father, Harold Graves, older, heavier, but the same cold, calculating eyes I had known my whole life. He looked at me as though he'd expected to see a frightened little girl, crying and broken. Instead, he saw a woman who had been through hell and lived. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to straighten, lift my chin, and meet his gaze. Linda, he said, voice syrupy with fake affection. What are you doing here? Why did you? You know why I'm here. I cut him off. My voice was steady, sharper than I had thought possible. I'm here because you sold me. You handed me over to men who would destroy me for your greed. Sam stepped forward, placing himself slightly behind me. His presence was a shield, a promise that I wouldn't be alone in this. Dad's eyes flicked to him, narrowing. Sam, Dad said slowly, trying to mask his unease with calm. Always the hero. Always thinking you can fix everything. I can't fix what you did to her, Sam said. But I can make sure you pay for it. Dad laughed, a low, wet sound. Pay? What could you possibly do? You're nothing but a boy playing at justice. I stepped closer. You think you can intimidate me? You think the same fear that worked on me as a child will work now? I survived hell because I refused to be afraid of you anymore. Dad's smile faltered slightly. That was the first crack in his armor. I took a deep breath and told him everything. Every detail he'd thought I couldn't remember. Every scream I had heard, every bruise. Every night spent terrified of what would happen if I tried to escape. I described the compound, the men, the guards, the cold, the hunger, the moments I thought I would die alone. I told him about Lila, about Grace, about the escape, and about the forest that had brought me back to life. I told him about Sam's relentless search, about the hope he had carried like a torch through the darkness for 6 months. And as I spoke, I watched the color drain from his face, his eyes widening like he couldn't comprehend that the little girl he sold had returned. You, he whispered, shaking. You lived? You survived. His voice trailed off, disbelief and fear colliding in his chest. Yes, I lived, I said. And I'm standing here today not just as the girl you tried to destroy, but as the woman you underestimated. You thought money could erase me. You thought fear could control me. You were wrong. Sam stepped forward, voice low but deadly. This ends today, Dad. No excuses. No lies. The police already have everything we need. Your time of hiding behind threats is over. For a moment, Dad just stared. Then his eyes burned red with rage. He lunged forward, yelling something I didn't even catch. Sam grabbed him instantly, holding him back with all the strength in his body. I felt my own fury surge like a wildfire I had been holding in check for months. You betrayed me, I shouted. You betrayed everything that was supposed to protect me. My father. My family. You made me a pawn, and you think I will let you walk away. Dad's face twisted in rage, shame, and desperation. He shouted, screamed, even tried to push Sam off me, but he was weak. Not from age alone, but because for the first time in his life, he faced a force he could not dominate. We were no longer children to be intimidated. We were survivors, warriors forged in fire. The police arrived minutes later, called by Sam in advance, and took him into custody. I watched as he was led away. The man who once held power over me finally powerless, finally facing consequences for the life he tried to steal. His eyes met mine one last time, wild and frantic, but I didn't flinch. I didn't turn away. I let him see me as I was. Unbroken, alive, and filled with a quiet, hard-earned rage. Even after he was arrested, the emotional storm didn't immediately pass. I cried for what I had lost, the childhood that would never return, the friends who might still be trapped, the innocence stolen. Sam stayed with me every step, gentle but firm, making sure I was safe, cared for, and supported. Together, we began working with law enforcement to track down everyone involved in the trafficking network. The work was grueling. Every detail reopened memories I had tried to bury. Every phone call, every investigation, every witness statement reminded me of what I had endured. But through it all, I kept my focus: justice. I had survived, and now I would ensure no one else would suffer the same way. Months passed. Sam and I moved to a safe house in another state. I began therapy, slowly learning to trust again, learning that fear didn't have to rule me. Sam never left my side, not for a moment. We laughed for the first time in years. We cried together. We shared memories, dreams, hopes that had been buried beneath fear and betrayal. And in quiet moments I realized something profound. Surviving wasn't enough. I had to thrive. I had to take back control of my life. I started small walks in the park, rebuilding relationships with the people who loved me, speaking openly about my story to those who would listen. I began speaking at events, sharing my survival story, warning young girls about danger, about trust, about the power of persistence and hope. Even with justice served, even with Dad behind bars, I knew there would always be a shadow. The memories, the pain, the betrayals, they would never fully disappear. But now I could face them. Now I could stand tall and say, I survived. I endured. And I fought back. And Sam? My brother became my rock, my protector, and my co-warrior. Together we had faced the monster that tried to erase me. Together we had survived hell and come out stronger. In those moments I understood something no amount of pain could ever teach me. Resilience is born from fire, courage is forged in darkness, and love, the love of a brother, of family, of the self, can make even the most broken person unbreakable. The first morning after everything ended, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds of the safe house. It was a soft golden light, not the harsh glare of the compound or the flickering of a fluorescent hospital room. I took a deep breath, feeling the air in my lungs for the first time in months, truly feeling it. I was alive. I was free. And for the first time I realized I had a life ahead of me, unshackled from fear. Sam was already awake, sitting at the small kitchen table sipping coffee, reviewing the latest news on the arrests. His eyes lifted when he saw me. "Morning," he said, voice low but kind. No jokes, no teasing. Just the quiet, steady presence that had become my anchor. "Morning," I whispered, forcing a smile. My throat was dry, and my chest still ached with exhaustion and lingering tension. Did it all really end? Sam set his mug down. "Yes. They're all behind bars. Your father, the men, everyone who tried to harm you. The police made sure nothing slipped through the cracks this time." I closed my eyes. Relief washed over me, but even in that relief, I could feel the echoes of the months I had endured. The darkness, the fear, the nights I thought I would die. I shivered at the memory, but I also felt something else. Strength. Something no one could ever take from me again. Over the next few weeks, I began the long, painful work of healing. Therapy became my lifeline. At first I resisted, afraid to open those doors in my mind that had been slammed shut for so long. But step by step, word by word, I began to process the trauma I had survived. I spoke of the horrors in the compound, of the abuse and the fear, of the constant uncertainty. I spoke of Lila, of Grace, of the girls I couldn't save. And every time I told my story, the weight on my chest lifted slightly, replaced by a growing sense of power. I learned to trust again, not blindly but carefully, deliberately. Every kind word, every gesture of support, reminded me that not all people were monsters. And in that I found the courage to start building a new life. Sam and I worked on reconnecting with our family, who had remained distant during my disappearance. Some of them didn't understand why I hadn't come back sooner. Some were skeptical, fearful even. But Sam stood by me, and slowly we rebuilt those bridges, choosing who deserved our trust and leaving behind those who didn't. I started volunteering at local organizations, helping other survivors of abuse and trafficking. Sharing my story became both a catharsis and a mission. Every girl I helped, every woman I encouraged became a piece of the justice I sought, not just for me, but for all those who had suffered in silence. It was in helping others that I began to feel whole again. The anger that had once consumed me transformed into purpose. Even now, years later, when I sit alone in quiet moments, I remember the fear. I remember the nights of rain in the forest, the escape through the mud and darkness, the faces of those I lost. And sometimes my chest aches with grief, a grief I know I will carry forever. But I also remember Sam. I remember the embrace that reminded me that I was never truly alone. I remember the first morning I woke up outside that compound, feeling the sun on my face, the freedom in my lungs. I remember the moment I finally stood before my father and told him that I had survived, that I was no longer afraid. And I remember looking at him, seeing the fear in his eyes for the first time in my life, and knowing that the power had shifted forever. I built a quiet, simple life. A small home filled with the warmth of light, books, and laughter. I traveled sometimes, always returning to the forest that once nearly killed me, not out of fear, but out of respect for what I had endured. I stayed close to Sam, my protector, my brother, my co-warrior. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories together, always remembering the darkness we had survived and the life we had reclaimed. And me? I became stronger than I ever imagined. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear control you. I learned that love of family, of friends, of oneself, is what carries us through even the darkest nights. And I learned that surviving hell doesn't just make you endure. It makes you rise. If I could tell every girl, every woman, every human being one thing, it would be this: your past does not define you. Your pain does not define you. And the monsters you face, no matter how terrifying, no matter how relentless, do not have the power to destroy the person you are inside. Fight, survive, rise. And when you do, never forget. Strength comes from within, but love and support from those who care for you make it unbreakable. Now, years later, I live quietly, but I live fully. The shadows of my past never leave me completely. How could they? But I have learned to walk with them instead of letting them drag me under. I tell my story not for pity, not for sympathy, but so that anyone who hears it might find a flicker of hope. I tell it so that the world knows. Even when the people you trust most betray you, even when the darkness seems endless, even when survival feels impossible, you are stronger than you know. I am Linda Graves. I survived. I endured. I rose. And I will never stop standing for what is right, for what is just, and for the life I was always meant to reclaim. And this is my story. If you like my story, then hit the like button and subscribe also.